Hi everyone, I'm here with Maria Caruso. Again, so excited to talk to you because the last time we saw each other was when the last time we spoke for this outlet was when you were finishing your tour in London with the show Metamorphosis. And that was such a tour de force. And I'm so excited to know everything that's been happening in the last 2 years. I know you've been kind of all over the place. You've done different types of art, and now you're going back on stage and again in London. And so I'm very excited to know a little bit what happened.
This is awesome. And it's so crazy because so much has happened since our last interview, which
Yeah.
was in London. So my new show is called Incarnation, and it is um, in some ways hard to explain, in some ways very simple. When and you were there to see the show in London. So I think what I found to be very compelling was the opportunity to interact with the audience afterwards. And the Q&A for me was like just a really pivotal moment of reflection. And I think that it was in those moments with the people, and so many people that asked so many interesting and thought-provoking questions about the work itself, that really got me to think about the next steps in my journey. So, Incarnation is essentially an in-depth retelling of the intimate stories that I told with no words in those moments in time, and those dresses that represented turning points in my life. And I think that I was very willing to share that part of me and be in that vulnerable space as a dancer and as a performing artist. But I don't think I was ready to fully express what actually happened and to make it personal. I think that the reason Metamorphosis did so well at the time was that I think it spoke to so many people, and everyone could see themselves in each of these turning points, and it made it relatable.
Mhm.
And I think that that was why it didn't need any words or any further explanation or expression. I left that stage in July 4th. It was like I was done dancing. I had nothing more to say. I felt there was something inside me, and I just didn't know what it was, but dance was just, it just wasn't dance. And, it's kind of like, you know, I needed a pause. I needed a moment to just like let dance not be part of my life. Things were just changing in my life. And so, to kind of take you a little further in the journey, my husband and I decided that we were going to move to Los
Mm.
Angeles. And that was like a big moment for us. I've lived in, I've built my company in Pittsburgh, and I was preparing to, build this theater and do all this stuff. And for some reason, because of his job relocation and just kind of in my heart wanting something different and wanting a change and trying to figure out why I wasn't feeling like I wanted to be on the stage anymore. And that was like the first time I'd ever felt that in my life. So, we just decided, we packed everything up and we moved to Los Angeles. And the day after we got to LA, Metamorphosis, the final show that was filmed, um, it was on Broadway on demand. And I remember very clearly moving into our new house, getting, and like things still, boxes unpacked, and just stopping for a moment and sitting down with my husband and watching Metamorphosis and being there, like sobbing, like watching myself going, oh my God, is this what I've been doing all over the world? Like, wow, like that's a story. Like, that I had no
Yeah.
idea even, I had no idea what I was doing because I was in the moment and I was telling my story from the inside, and it was coming out through my body, but I never watched it. And when I watched it, I thought to myself, wow, like
It
there's
was
still,
powerful.
and it felt like there was still something more inside at that moment in time, and I still couldn't figure out what it was. I still determined that like I did not want to be on the stage.
Mm.
So I decided that if I were going to go into the film and television industry, that I would not make a lateral move because I just didn't think that was really fair. Easy. So many people had offered me lovely roles on significant shows and were like, oh yes, we'll hook you up, we'll connect you with this agent and this and this and this. And I was like, no, no, thank you. Because I needed to learn like the new language, the language of the art, the craft of being behind a camera, which is different than being in front of 2,000 people. And so I took it, I called it my creative sabbatical.
To be in a place of I mean, in lack of better word, but ignorance, right? Like to be in a place where you don't really know how things work, and there are more experienced people than you. Because for a while, when you're leading a company, when you're leading a school, and you're a
Yeah.
solo performer, you're leading yourself during this whole time, and you know a lot. And now from being like, again, to the background, it's like, oh, wait a minute, it must be exciting
Yes.
to go back to that.
It was exhilarating. And I just said, let me do what I do best, which is meet people and find talent. I have been in academia for, going on 20 years. I have recruited some of the best talent across the globe for students for scholarship opportunities. I recruit artists and I had recruited artists for my company for years. And so I always felt that when I saw talent, I was able to make a connection and to, you know, nurture that.
Yeah.
So I said, let me do the same thing in film and television. So what I did, which was a little bit crazy. So aside from I started off doing some small jobs. I took every job that I could, unpaid, paid, it didn't matter. And my very first job was doing a music video, which for me was really great because there was a movement component. It was a non-speaking role. And this young man who was directing was just so talented. And I was like, you're so talented. Can we work together? And so I called him up and I said, look, I need to learn about the business and I want to start a film company. And I want to, it started off as like, I think I should do a reel. Can we do one together? 2-3 minutes. That's what I was looking for. And then 2-3 minutes turned into a 20-minute short and hiring 22 people and starting two
Love
film
it.
companies.
Very you.
So that very me, very me. So here I was, I had I'm on set and with this amazing script. And I was like, you're talented. I'm like, you have to know more talented people. I'm like, so you let me know who they are and let's pull them together and let's make something really fabulous. I loved it, but there was still an element that was missing.
Yeah.
But what I did learn during that time was the importance of movement and subtlety in stage performance.
Mhm.
And, as I was directing some new works that I was creating, I was realizing that I was working with my dancers in a different way because I was taking what I was learning from film and how to respond to a camera and what those little subtleties mean in
Mhm.
every little action that we have and that we as humans, like just how we move. And I guess what I started thinking to myself is if I can think about myself as a solo performer, as a stage performer, and I can
Yeah.
take everything I know about stage performance, and now I can take all this new information that I've learned performing behind a camera, how can I create something even more spectacular? And also, how can I help guide the audience with a narrative? And that's kind of how Incarnation was born.
Because it's after 2 years being off stage in a way, now going back to it, how do you feel about it?
I'm terrified. I mean, it's such a big stage and I mean, terrified is a good thing for me. So I thrive in
It's
chaos.
exciting. It's an
It's
excitement
exciting.
more than
It's
a fear.
exactly, exactly. And I feel like this is a very different show. And Incarnation is again, it is the retelling of what happened in Metamorphosis that was my perspective. And so I think when everyone watched Metamorphosis, they took that story and those visuals and they made it their own. And this is still relatable, but it's very deep because the work is a narration. So there is a narration of these moments in time, a conversation that's happening. It's about letters that I wrote, and it's just, to me, I want Incarnation to be seen as not just a beautiful stage production, but I want it to feel like you're watching a film.
That makes
And
sense.
I I also feel incredibly blessed to have an amazing composer. So I had the option to work with a variety of composers, and I chose a 21-year-old student at Carnegie Mellon University who is a protege of one of the composers, Nancy Galbraith, who I've worked with in the past. But I'm really just passionate about giving young people the opportunity to step forward. And I listened to a sample of Ryan Onestak's music, and I was like, this is it. This is the score. Like, he is going to score this work. And once the score was built, then, I got to start getting in the recording studio and start adding in the text, the narration, and it really all came together. And, it's definitely a show that's a little bit more set and costume heavy compared to works that I've done in the past, because I'm very, like, I show up with, like, my production set is like a suitcase that has like a carry-on that has my fabric and like my 5 dresses, and then that's usually it. It could all be bundled into like one handheld thing. And this
Easy
is a
to
little bit
travel.
different. Yes, yes, I travel light. And so this is a little bit different. And
One thing that I think it's a big challenge for dancers when they step off the stage for a while is coming back. I think that there's a lot of dancers that have this, they fall out of love for, not for dance, but for performing, for whatever reasons, or they get hurt or something. And then, so, and you teach so much, you deal with so many different types of bodies and styles and everything. What would be your advice for people that have been dwelling with that idea of like, okay, now I'm missing dance a little bit. I'm missing the possibility of going on stage, and you're doing that, and it takes a lot of courage to go back as well, because performing is, it's hard work. So
yeah, and I said this to a very dear friend of mine. I said, I am now comfortable coming back to the stage as the dancer I am now. And I think that is the only advice I can give to anybody. Because I think, most dancers, once they're done, they're done. And coming back is not really an option. And in my experience with most dancers who step away from it, it's just like, I can't go back. I can't, because I only remember what I was. And I'm not that anymore. And for some reason, maybe it took the year of reflection to recognize that, like, my body is not what it was. And um, I would tell everyone that, not to expect that I am training to do things that I did when I was 20. That's not how my training routine is different. I've decided to do I have a very different training regimen where I'm incorporating a lot more yoga, Pilates training than I have in the past, less time in the rigidity of like the class, like, so that I'm not so caught up in looking in the mirror and staying focused on like the discipline of dance and being the dancer that I was. Cause I think it's hard, when I take a ballet class, it's like, oh my gosh, my leg still doesn't go as high as it used to. And so I've decided to like step away from, it's still part of my routine. It's still part of how I train. It's still part of how I'm preparing for this show, but I'm just spending more time being comfortable in my skin and exploring ways to do that. And that I find to be very nourishing. And, you know, um, we'll see what happens on the stage. You know, it's gonna be, it's very different. It feels different. And I think that, you know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting something, you know, expecting the result, um, for, you know, I'm trying to combat that, you know, I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to change, and um, I'm I'm letting go of expectation, you know, I'm just, what I do know is that part of my success was in the early years and up until my last performance on stage was just being my most authentic self and giving of myself to
And I
others.
think, yeah, I think
That's
you
what
do
I
that.
plan to do.
Yeah, but I think you do that wonderfully. Again, we could talk for a million hours. I think you're always so insightful and it's always great to have this chat. But sadly, the interview has to come to an end.
Well,
But
thank
thank
you
you
so
so
much for the
much.
time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.